Welcome my subscribers, especially the new ones. Hope you enjoy the videos. If you do, make sure you subscribe and feel free to comment. This video is entitled Currency Wars, and the reason for that is you should be aware that there's currency wars going on around the planet at the moment. Lots of volatility in the world currency markets as nations try to reposition themselves. Some nations are deliberately trying to devalue their dollar to try to protect their export markets. This here is a US dollar. It's the reserve currency of the world. By that, what we mean is that just about every country in the world buys products like oil and high demand products like that for their economy, and they buy it in US dollars. If a country like China wants to buy some oil from Saudi Arabia won't quote it in their local currency. They'll quote it in US dollars, and they'll normally expect payment in US dollars. That means there's a whole bunch of money, and we're talking trillions of dollars of US money that's floating around the world as currency, and it's been a big advantage for the United States for years, because what's happened is it means they can pay for all their deficit spending, deficit trading, their balance of payments where they import more goods than they export by simply printing more money and exporting their inflation to the rest of the world. What's happening now is countries like China and Russia in particular saying we don't want to do that anymore. We're sick of the US getting a free ride off the rest of the world, and basically that's what's been happening. No offence to US citizens, but if you look at it, that's what's been happening. You've been getting a free ride off the rest of the world. You're wealthy and the rest of the world's paying for it, in a sense. I know with the unemployment that's happening there and that, people aren't feeling wealthy. And that's because the deficit, the fact they've always been importing more than they've been exporting, is actually finally coming home to roost. You can only do this sort of thing for so long before the market catches up with you, and the longer you allow it to go on, the harder the catch up. And what's going to happen is this money here, this US dollar, is going to become worthless, and a lot of people won't want it as the reserve currency of the world anymore. They'll want something else. There'll be stronger and stronger noises. There's either two ways. They'll either do it by an agreement, come up with some new currency or several reserve currencies, or something based on something other than paper issued by a government, or they will just simply allow the market to take its natural value, and you'll find, because they're printing so much of this money, because they've got so much debt that they're trying to cover by quantitative easing, that no one will accept that. In fact, I've heard stories of people in money changes in other parts of the world, especially South America, just saying, no, we're not going to change US dollars, we don't want them, they're worthless. You may say they're worth something, but they don't want them because they know, especially countries like Brazil and that. I've spoken to friends who've told me, in countries like Brazil, Argentina, where before they've had mass inflation or just simply government confiscation. What happens is the government comes out the next day, says, no, we're not using that dollar anymore, that currency's all dead, we've issued a new one. And they don't compensate the citizens for it. In Brazil, they didn't compensate the citizens for it. If you had, let's say, $20,000 in the bank, you just simply lost that $20,000. It was state-sponsored theft. They stole money from the middle class to pay off their debts. And that's what we're looking as a possibility even in America, that eventually they'll just steal money from the middle class. They've already given trillions to their bankster-mates, and the problem with that is if you destroy your middle class, you're going to have the fabric of society fall apart. It's the middle class that creates your real wealth generation, your new ideas, your productivity, they're the ones who provide the tax base and are the ones who the engine driving the economy. If you destroy that engine, you're left with it more of a feudal society where you have those who are very wealthy, the elites, and you're left with the plebs who are very poor. And when Rome destroyed its middle class, it ended up destroying its nation, because why would you go to fight in wars to support an empire that didn't look after you anymore? You wouldn't. You'd say, stuff it. And that's what happened. Eventually Rome got swamped by barbarians, partly because they destroyed the base of their currency, destroyed their middle class, and the only people who were willing to fight for Rome were mercenaries that they imported in. So history teaches us many lessons. These are just some paper currency I've collected over the time. It's a South Korean 1,000 won. Just have a look at this. But just be careful. Obviously, investing in silver, we're more interested in silver, and we invest in it to protect ourselves from the currency. But you've got to be aware when you're buying, your currency is going to have an impact. In the case of the Australian dollar, for a long time there, in relative to the US dollar, we weren't seeing a growth in the price of silver, because every time silver went up, seeing Australia's a big silver exporter, the Australian dollar was going up. So we weren't gaining as much as other people were in other parts of the world. Now the Australian dollar is almost on parity with the US. It's at 99.5 cents today. And the only thing stopping it going over the value of the US dollar is the mental view that the Australian dollar has always been worth less than the American dollar. I believe once that psychological barrier is broken in the traders' minds, that $1 value, you're going to see the Australian dollar rise dramatically against the US dollar. That's my personal belief. As I said, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm certainly not a currency trader. But that's my belief. Once that psychological barrier's gone, it'll go a lot higher. Unless the Australian government decides it can't live with this, it having such a high dollar, and it's going to hurt our exporters, because remember, we're a big exporter in mining goods. Let's have a look at some more money. There's a old style British pound, £1. Bank of Indonesia. That's a rupiah. We've got here $10 from the Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation. I don't know if Hong Kong still has its own currency. If anyone knows in the comments, tell me. I think that may gone to Chinese. That's paper money. My son's just come in. There's an old Reserve Bank of New Zealand £1. That's the old pre-decimal currency. Singapore dollar. They've got quite colourful money. That's a Singapore dollar. Old style New Zealand $1. Bank of New Zealand. £1 again. So your Isaac Newton on the back. We've got some Greek money there. Pentokona. I presume that's 50 krona. Don't have that anymore. They've gone to the euro in Greece. Perhaps they're wishing they'd be back in their own currency. Canadian $2. 10 shillings. That would have been a lot of money in those days. My dad used to get pocket money of a shilling. So 10 shillings would have been a lot of money. You could have bought a lot with that. But in today's sense, that's $1. Dollars won't even buy you a cup of coffee. Old $2 Australian bill. We have $2 coins now instead of the notes. And an old Australian $1 bill. If you're buying silver, you've got to be aware the currencies are going to have an impact. Some of the gain in silver that we're seeing isn't actually increase in the value of the silver, it's a decrease in the value of the money. Alright, so that's where, when I'm talking about silver at least being a hedge against inflation. Alright, what we're seeing in the rise of silver is the depreciation in the value of the currency. So just be aware of that. Industrial demand is picking up. but it's not the driving impact at the moment. I do not think we've yet seen
if it could work,
the investor demand really driving the silver market yet.
This in your wallet. Okay.
I'll go now. Have a good day.